Before the giants walked the earth, there was a pact made in the highest heavens. 200 watchers, led by the entity known as Samyasa, cast their eyes downward and saw that the daughters of men were beautiful. But this was no mere attraction, it was a calculated rebellion. On the summit of Mount Hermon, these celestial beings bound themselves by a mutual curse, swearing an oath to abandon their station and infiltrate the human bloodline. They descended like falling stars, tearing through the veil between dimensions. As they stepped onto the rugged peaks of the mountain, the very ground trembled under the weight of their divine essence. They brought with them the secrets of the cosmos, but their true mission was to forge a new kingdom. The air grew thick with a cold, unnatural energy as the first contact was made. This was the moment the laws of creation were shattered, setting the stage for the birth of a lineage that would nearly bring the world to its knees. The light of the stars seemed to dim as these fallen architects prepared to mingle their light with the dust of the earth. The hybridization began in the shadows of the first cities. The union of the divine and the terrestrial was a violent collision of two different worlds. As the DNA of the Watchers merged with human genetics, the results were both magnificent and horrifying. The women of the earth found themselves carrying children that defied the laws of biology. These infants did not grow like men. They expanded with an unnatural speed, their bones thickening, and their eyes harboring a light that was not of this world. It was a biological corruption that stained the bloodline of humanity forever. Ancient mothers watched in fear as their children grew larger than their fathers within just a few years. The sacred code of life, once perfect and balanced, was now rewritten by celestial intruders. This was the birth of the Nephilim, a species that was never intended to exist in the garden of the Creator. They were hybrids of light and clay, possessed by spirits that knew no boundaries and bodies that knew no limits, growing into a stature that the earth could barely support. By the time they reached adulthood, the Nephilim had become the titans of the old world. Their physical presence was an affront to nature. Towering over the tallest men, they stood between 12 and 30 feet in height, their frames built with the density of stone. They were the mighty men of renown, but their fame was built on fear. Biological anomalies marked their bodies. Double rows of teeth filled their mouths, and 6 fingers adorned each hand, signs of their distorted lineage. Their voices were like the roar of the ocean, capable of shattering glass and striking terror into the hearts of any who heard them. They wore armor crafted from star metal, alloys taught to them by their angelic fathers, and carried weapons that could level a forest with a single swing. These were not mere humans. They were living monuments of power. They did not walk the earth so much as they dominated it. Their every step a reminder that humanity was no longer at the top of the food chain. They were the masters of the physical realm, gifted with angelic intellect and demonic strength. The prosperity of the Nephilim came at a terrible price. As they grew in size and number, their hunger became an insatiable force of destruction. The earth, once fertile and abundant, could not sustain their massive caloric needs. First, they consumed the surplus of the fields, emptying the granaries of the human cities. Then they turned to the livestock, devouring entire herds of cattle and sheep in a single day. But even the animals were not enough to quench their endless craving. Ancient texts tell a horrifying story. When the land was stripped bare, the giants turned their eyes toward humanity. They became the first predators of mankind, the first cannibals to walk the earth. Panic consumed the world as the men of renown became hunters of their own human cousins. The screams of the hunted echoed through the valleys as the Nephilim transformed the world into a slaughterhouse. This was the dark era of the Devouring, where the divine heritage of the giants was fully corrupted by a monstrous, carnal hunger that spared no one. With the world in their grasp, the Nephilim established a global empire of blood and sorcery. They were the first kings, ruling from thrones of ivory and gold that reached the ceilings of their megalithic halls. They did not just govern, they demanded worship. They proclaimed themselves as gods, forcing the human population to build gargantuan monuments to their glory. Inside these temples of ego, the Nephilim practiced the forbidden arts taught by the Watchers. They experimented with the crossing of species, creating chimeras and abominations that distorted the natural order even further. It was an era of technological and spiritual tyranny, where the advanced knowledge of the stars was used to enslave the minds of men. The Nephilim kings were the architects of a dark civilization that sought to replace the Creator's order with their own chaotic rule. They built ziggurats that functioned as energy hubs and palaces that defied gravity, all while the blood of the oppressed fueled their dark ascension. The world had become a prison of stone and shadow, ruled by the monstrous heirs of the fallen. The end came with the opening of the floodgates of heaven. The Great Flood was not just a natural disaster, it was a cosmic cleansing designed to wipe the genetic stain of the Nephilim from the face of the earth. Their massive bodies were crushed by the weight of the water, buried deep beneath the silt and mud of the rising oceans. But while their flesh was destroyed, their spirits had no place to go. Denied entry into heaven and refused the rest of death, the spirits of the Nephilim became the disembodied demons that haunt the corners of our world today. They are the wandering shades, the evil spirits mentioned in ancient scrolls, forever seeking a body to inhabit. Their physical legacy remains in the megalithic ruins we cannot explain, and the giant skeletons that are found and then hidden by the corridors of official history. From the mounds of North America to the Cyclopean walls of the Mediterranean, the shadows of the giants still linger. We are living on top of their graveyard, unaware that the heirs of the fallen are still watching, waiting for the moment they can return to the light.